This message was meant to find you if you're going through a time when you're not sure what you bring to the table. This is a hard feeling to deal with. It's difficult to feel like you have to do something, you have to feel like something, you have to perform in order to find love. And it it's hard, but it's also really easy when you start to wrap your head around what love really is and what it really means to be in divine union. So, this video specifically is for heterosexual people in normative, monogamous kind of relationships. I'll make another video separately for non binary people and LGBTQ relationships. So, bear with me here. And if you are leaning LGBTQ and you don't tend to have heterosexual relationships, then maybe wait for the other one. But here, I want to share a little bit about what I've been learning around polarities and the masculine and feminine and all of these things that people have been talking about for years. But I've always felt very disconnected from this narrative because it felt very limiting and it felt very anti feminist. But recently, I've started to learn a lot more and adjust what I've understood to my learning. So, based on that, I want to share with you. This is from the Devi Puran. This is Puranic text, which is an ancient text from my culture in India that describes how the process of creation occurred. And I want to share this with you because I think it adds a lot to how we think about relationships, love, masculine, feminine, all of that. So, originally there was Devi, there was Shakti, there was Adi Shakti, or Aditi. There's different names for this primordial force, but essentially it's the force that created everything, the one true creator. And from this force came dyads. Dyads, as in creators who needed to meet each other to create. Gods or forces or energies that needed to meet each other in union and then create. And they were sort of opposites. And this is also where I think we get this phrase opposites attract. So these dyads, three of them were Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and their consorts Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Gauri. Now, when we got these dyads of Brahma and Saraswati, Lakshmi and Vishnu, Shiva and Gauri, we got essentially forces of creation, stabilization or preservation, and destruction. So the creator, Brahma, was the creator. He was called the creator. And his consort is Saraswati. Saraswati represents wisdom. Without the power of wisdom, creation becomes useless. You can create a lot, but if it's not coming from a place of wisdom, if it's not coming from a place of this is what the world needs, if it's not coming from a place of intelligent design, then the creation is useless. So, in order to create, Brahma needed Saraswati. And Saraswati was wisdom. Then, in order to stabilize, Vishnu needed wealth, Lakshmi. Without wealth, without the ability to collect wealth, without the ability to build resource in any form, not just money. Money is one form, but there's also the resource of land, the resource of cattle, the resource of knowledge. There's so much resource that needs to be built in order to create preservation, stability, or longevity. And then there's Shiva and Parvati or Gauri. So Shiva was the force of destruction. He's the destroyer. And he needed the power of transformation, decomposition and transformation that happens when you have the earth, Parvati, the earth that you can send all of the destroyed material to in order to help recycle and reuse that energy for something else in the future. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it's very interesting for me how these gods, now there's many versions of this story of creation, but this version of it has shown me that these gods, the creator, the stabilizer, the destroyer, they're just looking at the word itself, it's this the creator. In the sense, you create, you do something, you stabilize, you destroy, you're doing something. These masculine gods were doers, whereas these feminine goddesses, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Parvati, the force of wisdom, the power of wealth, the power of regeneration or transformation, these powers are much more things you just have or don't have. You can't do wisdom. You can't do wealth. You can do things to facilitate having more wealth. You can do things to like, you can read a lot and gather a lot of knowledge, which hopefully translates to wisdom if that's what your brain is capable of doing. But it's not necessary that you read a lot and you suddenly have a lot of wisdom. You may have a lot of knowledge, you may have a lot of information, you may be able to share it with people, but it doesn't mean that you have the power of wisdom. Wisdom is something that, people say comes with age, comes with experience, comes with digestion of a lot of different types of knowledge, not just one. It's a very complex force. And similarly, Parvati, the ability to decompose, to transform, you can facilitate the process of decomposition by creating the right environment for that. But ultimately, the decomposition will just happen by itself. The transformation you want to happen to yourself, if you have a part of you that is dying and you need to transform it, for example, when you're coming out of an addiction or when you're coming out of a long relationship, that's your job to facilitate. But beyond that, the transformation itself will just happen or not happen. So when we think about how the Puranics put it, how my ancestors put it for us, I feel like there was a hidden message there around how the masculine is the doing force, which obviously you can't just have wisdom. There's no point of just having the wisdom, which is the feminine, Saraswati, and not having the creator. Because what do you do with that wisdom if you don't create? It's a waste of the wisdom if you're not going to do anything with it. So you have the wisdom, the femininity, this thing that you just have or don't have. And then you have the masculine creator, which acts on what you have. And it's quite magical. I've seen, at least, it's quite magical what happens in relationships where there is this perfect sync, where one is the wisdom and one is the creator, where it's not mismatched in this energetically, where both are not trying to force creation and both are not trying to force wisdom. And this obviously does not mean that you can't be both inside us, because one of the main things that they say from Vedic and Puranic and all of our texts is that we, as above, so below. Yat Brahmand, Tat Pinde. Which means the structure that we're following above of this one union of Adi Shakti becoming all these dyads, and then the dyads creating together all of these other gods, and from the gods and gods we create, human beings, and then also other kinds of beings that are described. What we're speaking of is within us, we have this one, and then we have the two, and then we have the many, which means within me, I have the ability to feel both the masculine and the feminine. And this is something that there's a nuance that a lot of people tend to miss out on when they're talking about masculine and feminine in relationship. So I want to definitely highlight that. I think it's very important for us to be able to experience the masculine and the feminine within us. And at the same time, I think that when we have a body and we have a predisposition mentally and emotionally to feel more of one side of the polarity than the other, then this creates an environment where it would just be so much easier and so much more convenient and so much more fruitful for our inner being to be able to stay on that side of the polarity at least some of the time, which is the time that we spend with our partner. So there may be cases where this doesn't apply. This is not a rule. This is not something that will tell you like how to live your life. This is more of the sense that I'm getting around what my ancestors were explaining to us when they spoke of these things, less as a rule and more as a light suggestion around what could be possible. If we see the masculine as the creator, as the doer, the creator, stabilizer, destroyer, the doer, and the feminine as the beer, it also makes sense for us to see that in the process of creating a child. Now, this does not mean that you have to have a child. I'm just explaining it through this metaphor. So the masculine has to do, in the sense, for those few seconds, like, okay, first find a partner who would be willing to be with them. So that's also part of the doing. And then be with that partner long enough for her to feel secure in having a child with him. And then the act of sex. And then beyond that, taking care of the partner so that she is capable of feeling her intuition, her body, her signals that her body will give her during the pregnancy and afterwards, to be able to take care of the child to the best of her capacity. So in this frame, if the masculine is the doer, he displays that he is an ideal partner, which basically just, it alludes to how, in modern culture, we talk about how women are looking for people, a man who has a lot of resource, a man who has wealth and, money, and is like handsome, is like, strong and muscular. Obviously, all of that is part of essentially him being the doer. And even if he doesn't have all of those things, but he is the doer in the relationship, that itself can be really attractive. And what that frees up for the woman is space for her to do the things that she is the only one that can do. She is the only one that can feel what her baby really needs. She's the only one that can be that deeply connected to her intuition. Her sacral is so much bigger and stronger. And the sacral chakra is the seat where the womb lives. It's the seat from where we create. And as the woman, she has so much more power in that space than the man. Which is why once the seed is in, the woman is doing all the work, even if she's not doing it. Essentially, she's just being it. She's just taking care of her body enough so that her body can do the rest of the work. She doesn't have to actively try to do anything. But yes, her body is doing a lot. So in the process of creation of a child, her body is doing so much, and she's working really hard to make this happen. And what frees up her energy to be able to do this to the best of her capacity is essentially not having to think about doing other things. So when she doesn't have to think about, making the next meal, making money for food, finding a roof to put over her head, finding clothes to put on her body, worrying about safety and how she might have to run from a predator. If she doesn't have to think about all of this, then she has free space in her mind to connect with her sacral, to connect with her womb, and feel what the child might need right now within her. And then also once it's born, once the child is born, what does the child need when the child is crying? What cry of the child indicates that it's hungry? What cry indicates that it wants to be free? What cry indicates it wants to be held? That power to be able to predict and understand a child whose language is completely out of access for us comes only when we have free space in our mind. So all of this to say that in the early stages of a relationship, even though there is no pregnancy, everything that we've been traditionally told to do, like, okay, men pay for the date, men do blah, 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 and then women just show up, women just be there. When this question is becoming so popular nowadays of like, what do women bring to the table? It isn't really about them bringing anything to the table. It's about them being the table. It's about women being the thing that men are fighting over. And the larger idea here is also that if men can take care of the 3D, which means all of the physical needs and capacities, then women can take care of the 5D, which is essentially connecting with the intuition, maybe having some crazy premonitions about the future, having a deep sense of what the child might need, and not just the child, but because of the intuition being so strong, also knowing what the partner might need. Being able to have the free space and capacity to connect with the partner and be emotionally present for them, because a lot of the time men haven't had that for a long time in their life. They haven't had someone who is just emotionally present for them. So in this whole video, essentially, I just wanted to explain to you where I am right now, what I've understood so far of this masculine-feminine dynamic in the context of heterosexual relationships, and to be able to bring also to me some sense of integration and clarity around how this can be expressed without it sounding extremely anti feminist, which it really isn't when you look at it at its core. When you look at the way that it was originally intended to be expressed and understood, our ancestors would never want us to believe that we are any less than the other gender. It somehow happened, but it wasn't meant to.